Did you know that the legendary Viking warrior King Ragnar Lodbrok continues to captivate us centuries after his death? In this video, we will delve into the fascinating life of Ragnar Lodbrok and separate fact from fiction. Ragnar Lodbrok, Ragnar Hairy Breeches, according to legends, was a Viking hero and a Swedish and Danish king. He is known from Old Norse poetry of the Viking Age, Icelandic sagas, and near-contemporary chronicles. According to traditional literature, Ragnar distinguished himself by conducting many raids against the British Isles and the Carolingian Empire during the 9th century. He also appears in Norse legends, and according to the legendary Saga's tale of Ragnar's sons and a saga about certain ancient kings, Ragnar Lodbrok's father has been given as the legendary king of the Swedes, Sigurd Ring. Accounts. Icelandic sagas. A warrior with shaggy breeches, killing a beast, on one of the Torslanda plates. The man has been identified with Ragnar Lodbrok in an early Swedish version of the legend, Shuk. More recently, it has been interpreted as showing a Germanic initiation ritual in which shaggy trousers played a role and which may subsequently have contributed to the legend of Ragnar Lodbrok. According to the tale of Ragnar Lodbrok, Tale of Ragnar's Sons, Heimskringla, Ervarar Saga OK Hythrex, Sigubrat Aif Nakrum Fornkanungum, and many other Icelandic sources, Ragnar was the son of the king of Sweden Sigurd Ring. Nearly all of the sagas agree that the Danish king Randver was Sigurd's father, with the Ervarar Saga citing his wife as Asa, the daughter of King Harald of the Red Moustache from Norway. The accounts further tell that Randver was a grandson of the legendary Scandinavian king Ivar Vidfamne by his daughter Aud, whom the Ervarar Saga calls Alfhild. After the death of King Ivar Vidfamne, Aud's eldest son by the Danish king Harerik Ringslinger, Harald, conquered all of his grandfather's territory and became known as Harald Wartooth. Harald's nephew Sigurd Ring became the chief king of Sweden after Randver's death, Denmark according to Ervarar Saga, presumably as the subking of Harald. Sigurd and Harald fought the Battle of the Bravalier, Bravalla, on the plains of Östergötland, where Harald and many of his men died. Sigurd then ruled Sweden and Denmark, being sometimes identified with a Danish king Sigfrid who ruled from about 770 until his death prior to 804. He sired a son with the princess Alfhild of the petty kingdom of Alfheimr, Ragnar Lodbrok, who succeeded him. Eystein Peli, who according to the Ervarar Saga was Harald Wartooth's son, ruled Sweden sometime after Sigurd until he was slain by the sons of Ragnar and Aslug. In their accounts of his reign, the sagas of Scandinavian prehistory, known as Fornaldar Sogur, tell more about Ragnar's marriages than about feats of warfare. According to the Sigubrat, he was the biggest and fairest of men that human eyes have seen, and he was like his mother in appearance and took after her kin. He first killed a giant snake that guarded the abode of the Geatish Jarl Hurith's daughter Thora Borgerjort, thereby winning her as his wife. The unusual protective clothes that Ragnar wore, when attacking the serpent, earned him the nickname Lodbrok. His sons with Thora were Eric and Agnar. After Thora died, he discovered Kraka, a woman of outstanding beauty and wisdom living with a poor peasant couple in Norway, and married her. This marriage resulted in the sons Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, Fvirk, Rungenvald and Sigurd Snake in the Eye. Kraka was later revealed to actually be Aslug, a secret daughter of the renowned hero Sigurd Fafnbun. As the sons grew up to become renowned warriors, Ragnar, not wishing to be outdone, resolved to conquer England with merely 2 ships. He was however defeated by superior English forces and was thrown into a snake pit to die in agony. The saga of Ragnar Lodbrok, Tale of Ragnar's Sons, and Heimskringla all tell of the great heathen army that invaded England at around 866, led by the sons of Ragnar Lodbrok to wreak revenge against King Alla of Northumbria, who was told to have captured and executed Ragnar. Danish sources. The Chronicon Roskildens, circa 1138, mentions Lodbrok, Lothbrodus, as father to the utterly cruel Norse king Yor, Rex Crudelissimus Norman Norum Yor, and his brothers, Ingvar, a double of Yor, Ubi, Bjorn, and Ulf, who rule the northern peoples. They call on the various Danish petty kings to help them ruin the realm of the Franks. Yor successfully attacks the kingdoms of Britain, though not as an act of revenge as in the Icelandic sagas. The Chronicle of Svernesson, circa 1190, is the first Danish text that mentions the full name, Ragnar Lodbrok. His son Sigurd invades Denmark and kills its king, whose daughter he marries as he takes over the throne. Their son in turn is Canute, ancestor of the later Danish kings. Neither of these sources mentions Ragnar Lodbrok as a Danish ruler. The first to do so is Saxo Grammaticus in his work Gesta Danorum, circa 1200. This work mixes Norse legend with data about Danish history derived from the Chronicle of Adam of Bremen, circa 1075. Here Ragnar's father Sigurd Ring is a Norwegian prince married to a Danish princess, and different from the victor of Bravelir, who had flourished about 13 generations earlier. Sigurd Ring and his cousin and rival Ring, that is, Sigvard and Anulo of recorded history, d. 812, are both killed in battle, whereupon Ragnar is elevated to the Danish kingship, identified by Saxo with Ragfrid, d. 814. His first deed is the defeat of the Swedish king Fro, who has killed Ragnar's grandfather. Ragnar is assisted in this by a ferocious shield maiden named Lagertha, Lagertha, whom Ragnar forces to marry him. In this marriage he sires the son Fridleif and 2 daughters. Ragnar later repudiates his marriage to Lagertha and marries Thora Borgerjort, a daughter of the Swedish king Hrothgar, after killing 2 venomous giant snakes that guard Thora's residence. His sons with Thora are Radbard, Dunvat, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, Bjorn Ironside, Agnar and Ivar the Boneless. From a non-marital relationship with an unnamed woman, described only as a daughter of a man named Asbjorn, Ragnar fathered Ub. Another, final marriage, to Svanlok, possibly another name for Auslug, produces another 3 sons, Ragnvald, Eric Weatherhat, and Tvirk. The sons were installed as sub-kings in various conquered territories. Ragnar led a Viking expedition to England and killed its king, Hama, before killing the Earls of Scotland and installing Sigurd Snake in the Eye and Radbard as governors. Norway was also subjugated, and Fridleif was made ruler there and in Orkney. Later on, Ragnar with 3 sons invaded Sweden where a new king called Sorel had appeared and withheld the heritage of Thora's sons. Sorel and his army were massacred and Bjorn Ironside was installed on the throne. Sometime later Bjorn was put in charge of Norway, while Ragnar appointed another son, Eric Weatherhat, as ruler in Sweden. He was subsequently killed by a certain Istein. One of the sons, Ub, revolted against his father at the instigation of his maternal grandfather Asbjorn, and could only be defeated and captured with utmost effort. Saxo moreover tells of repeated expeditions to the British Isles, one of which cost the lives of Dunvat and Radbard. Alla, son of Hama, with the help of allies known collectively as the Galli, possibly a group of Norse Gaels, who were known in Old Irish as Galgoidal, expelled Ragnar's sub-ruler Ivar the Boneless from England and remained a persistent enemy. Finally, the Scythians were forced to accept Tvirk as their ruler. In the end Tvirk was treacherously captured by the Hellespontine prince Daxon and burnt alive with his own admission. Hearing this, Ragnar led an expedition to Kievan Rus and captured Daxon, who was spared and exiled. Unlike the Icelandic sources, Saxo's account of Ragnar Lodbrok's reign is largely a catalogue of successful Viking invasions over an enormous geographical area. Among the seaborne expeditions was one against the Bjarmians and Finns, Sami, in the Arctic North. The Bjarmian use of magic spells caused foul weather and the sudden death of many Danish invaders, and the Finnish archers on skis turned out to be a formidable foe. Eventually these 2 tribes were put to flight and the Bjarmian king was slain. The historical King Harald clock is by Saxo, based on a passage in Adam's Chronicle, made into another persistent enemy of Ragnar, who several times incited the Jutes and Scanians to rebel, but was regularly defeated. After the last victory over Harald, Ragnar learned that King Alla had massacred Ragnar's men on Ireland. Incensed, he attacked the English king with his fleet but was captured and thrown to his death in the Snake Pit, the fate ascribed by tradition to the early Burgundian king Gunnar, as recounted in the Icelandic sagas. In spite of all his praise for Ragnar Lodbrok, Saxo also considers his fate as God's rightful vengeance for the contempt he had shown the Christian religion. Poetic and epigraphic sources. While the narrative Norse sources date from the 12th and 13th centuries, there are also many older poems that mention him and his kin. The Ragnarsdrapa, ostensibly composed by Bragi Boddason in the 9th century, praises a Ragnar, son of Sigurd, for a richly decorated shield that the poet has received. The shield depicts the assault on Jormunrek, the Hothningavik tale, the ploughing of Gefjon, and Thor's struggle with the Midgard serpent. Recent scholarship has suggested that the poem is in fact from circa 1000 and celebrates the Norse reconquest of England. The four tales depicted on the shield would then symbolize four aspects of the Lodbrok saga: the initial defeat of the sons of Lodbrok in England due to recklessness, Ivar the Boneless's deceitful approach to King Alla, Ivar's cunning snatching of land from Alla, Ragnar's struggle against the giant serpent in order to win Thora. The Nutstrapa of Sigvat Thordarson, circa 1038, mentions the death of Alla at the hands of Ivar in York, who carved the eagle on Ella's back. From this the story of the atrocious revenge of Lodbrok's sons already seems to be present. The reference to a blood eagle punishment has however been much debated by modern scholars. Another lay, Krakamol, put in the mouth of the dying Ragnar in the snake pit, recounts the exploits of Ragnar and mentions battles over a wide geographical area, several relating to the British Isles. The poem's name, Kraka's Lay, alludes to Ragnar's wife's Kraka, though modern philologists commonly date it to the 12th century in its present form. There is one runic inscription mentioning Lodbrok, carved on the prehistorical tumulus of Maeshowe on Orkney in the early 12th century. It reads, "This house was built a long time before Lodbrok's. Her sons, they were bold, scarcely ever were there such tall men of their hands." The expression "her sons" has given rise to the theory that Lodbrok was originally thought of as a woman, mother of the historically known sons. Frankish accounts of a 9th century Viking leader. The siege of Paris and the sack of Paris of 845 were the culmination of a Viking invasion of the kingdom of the West Franks. The Viking forces were led by a Norse chieftain named Reginharus, or Ragnar. This Ragnar has often been tentatively identified with the legendary saga figure Ragnar Lodbrok, but the accuracy of this is disputed by historians. Ragnar Lodbrok is also sometimes identified with a Ragnar who was awarded land in Terhout, Flanders, by Charles the Bald in about 841 but eventually lost the land as well as the favor of the king. Ragnar's Vikings raided Rouen on their way up the Seine in 845 and in response to the invasion, determined not to let the royal abbey of Saint-Denis, near Paris, be destroyed, Charles assembled an army which he divided into two parts, one for each side of the river. Ragnar attacked and defeated one of the divisions of the smaller Frankish army, took 111 of their men as prisoners and hanged them on an island on the Seine to honor the Norse god Odin, as well as to incite terror in the remaining Frankish forces. Ragnar's fleet made it back to his overlord, the Danish king Horik I, but Ragnar soon died from a violent illness that also spread in Denmark. Later continental accounts. Among the oldest texts to mention the name Lodbrok is the Norman history of William of Jumièges from circa 1070. According to William, the Danish kings of old had the custom to expel the younger sons from the kingdom to have them out of the way. It was during the time this practice was in fashion that King Lodbrok succeeded his unnamed father on the Danish throne. After gaining power he honored the said custom and ordered his junior son Bjorn Ironside to leave his realm. Bjorn thus left Denmark with a considerable fleet and started to ravage in West Francia and later the Mediterranean. Roughly contemporary with William is Adam of Bremen, whose history of the Archbishopric of Hamburg-Bremen contains many traditions about Viking-aged Scandinavia. In a passage referring to the Viking raids of the late 9th century, he mentions the Danish or Norse pirates Horich, Orwig, Godefrid, Rudolf and Ingvar, Ivar. This Ivar is in particular seen as a cruel persecutor of Christians, and a son of Lodbrok, Ingvar, Filius Lodparchi. Anglo-Saxon and Irish accounts of the father of Ivar and Halfdan. According to the contemporary Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and Asser's Life of Alfred, in 878 the brother of Hingwar and Hilften, with a naval fleet, a contingent of the great heathen army invaded Devon in England and fought the Battle of Cunwit. There the Vikings lost, their king slain and many dead, with few escaping to their ships. After the battle the Saxons took great plunder, and among other things the banner called Raven. The early 12th century annals of St. Neots further state that they say that the three sisters of Hingwar and Hubba, daughters of Lodbrok, wove that flag and got it ready in one day. They say, moreover, that in every battle, wherever the flag went before them, if they were to gain the victory a live crow would appear flying on the middle of the flag, but if they were doomed to be defeated it would hang down motionless, and this was often proved to be so. This is among the earlier references to the legendary hero Ragnar Lodbrok. The Irish Cogad Gadal Riga Lab from the 12th century, with information deriving from earlier annals, mentions King Halfdan, d. 877, under the name Mac Ragnall. The form Ragnall may refer to either Ragnvald or Ragnar, and the entry is a strong indication that the name of Ivars and Halfdan's father was really Ragnar or a similar name. The early 11th century Three Fragments contains a passage that gives a semi-legendary background to the capture of York by the Vikings in 866. The two younger sons of Halfdan, king of Lochlann, expelled the eldest son Ragnall, who sailed to the Orkney Islands with his three sons and settled there. Two of the sons later raided the English and Franks, proceeding to plunder in the Mediterranean. One of them learnt from a vision that Ragnar had fought a battle where the third son had been slain and in which he himself had most likely perished. The two Viking sons then returned home with a lot of dark-skinned captives. It has been hypothesized that this is an Irish version of Ragnar Lodbrok's saga, the Mediterranean expedition being a historical event taking place in 859–61. Ragnar's sons. The saga is published by Norstedts in a large-size illustrated version, 1880. The great heathen army is said to have been led by the sons of Ragnar Lodbrok, to wreak revenge against King Alla of Northumbria, who had previously executed Ragnar by casting him into a pit full of venomous snakes. Among the organizers were at least some of the brothers, Ivar the Boneless, Ubba, Halfdan, Bjorn Ironside, Fuderic, and Sigurd Snake in the Eye, all of whom are known as historical figures, save the slightly more dubious Fuderic. Ivar the Boneless was the leader of the great heathen army from 865 to 870, but he disappears from English historical accounts after 870. The Anglo-Saxon chronicler Ethelbert records Ivar's death as 870. Halfdan Ragnarsson became the leader of the great heathen army in about 870 and he led it in an invasion of Wessex. A great number of Viking warriors arrived from Scandinavia, as part of the Great Summer Army, led by King Baxic of Denmark, bolstering the ranks of Halfdan's army. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the Danes battled the West Saxons 9 times, including the Battle of Ashdown on 8 January 871, where Baxic was killed. Halfdan accepted a truce from the future Alfred the Great, newly crowned King of Wessex. After Baxic's death, Halfdan was the only remaining king of the invading host. He may also have been a king of part of Denmark, Jutland. Since a co-ruler Halfdan is mentioned in Frankish sources in 873. According to late sagas, Bjorn Ironside became king of Sweden and Uppsala, although this presents chronological inconsistencies. Bjorn had 2 sons, Eric and Refil Bjornsson. His son Eric became the next king of Sweden, and was succeeded in turn by Eric Refilsson, the son of Refil. Sigurd Snake in the Eye is perhaps the same person as Sigfrid, brother of Halfdan, who was king in Denmark together with Halfdan in 873. According to the sagas, Sigurd became king of Zealand, Skåne and the Lesser Danish Isles. Sigurd possibly succeeded his brother Halfdan as king of entire Denmark in about 877, and may be the Viking king Sigfrid who was killed in West Francia in 887. Thanks for watching this video on Ragnar Lodbrok. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories from history.